Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back in with you guys for another show. I'm joined by two wonderful people to discuss what wasn't a wonderful weekend. It's probably fair to say. Not the greatest of games. In fact, probably one of the worst that we've ever had to witness as Arsenal fans. But don't worry, because hopefully we can spice up your Monday evening with some entertainment and some chat. Speaking of these two wonderful people, first off, it's the man who's only just recently, because of the fantastic drive towards membership, has now got his own emoji. Fred, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, man. Yeah, good. Thanks for having me, and thanks for making me an emoji, man. It's the first time it's happened, so it's a big honor, and I hope to live up to it.
Avon is in the chat. He's one of our members. So is Prince. Boys, I mean, if you could, it'd be great to see that French emoji. And of course, the man who's had emoji for a while is my right-hand man. How you doing, Drew?
Hello, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. See, I still StreamYard doesn't support it, but you can see it if you're on YouTube. But on here, it just says French. But I mean, it's good enough. It's good enough. But in the YouTube chat, you can actually see them. So I'm hoping. I've actually requested from the people who run StreamYard to get the membership stuff up on the stream. So hopefully, very soon, we will have that. Let's talk about what was a interesting game for probably all the wrong reasons. French, I'm going to start with you, mate. Just talk to me about. I could easily ask you the reasons for what went wrong and why we didn't manage to score, but I just want an initial reaction and maybe even a lack of surprise of the performance that we saw.
Yeah, exactly. I think this was the game where we were thinking we're going to see where we're at under Arteta. Last game before the winter break and a chance, a little 6 days, Aubameyang's back. We should be able to play our best 11 and we get to see where we're at. And I think everyone would have liked to see a victory, like a nice 1-2-0, even a scrappy 2-1. But I don't think it was ever going to be a situation where we're at right now is we're going to just win these kind of games without question. But for me, I think overall, it was a lack of surprise, as you said. I expected us to be competitive throughout the game. We kept a clean sheet again, which is, I think, is third or fourth one since being announced. And the game in terms of defensive shape and structure, which is what we've seen Arteta bring in, was pretty good. And what we saw as well as a theme that's been recurring is a great start to the game. Probably say the first 20 minutes we were very dominant. First 45 in terms of like chance creation, we were definitely more dominant than Burnley. And as we've seen, we tailed off in the second half, and Burnley had a lot more possession. They created some chances, not the same kind of chances and volume of chances that were being created near the end of the last manager's reign, but it was definitely just the kind of same theme that we've seen so far. And I think this is where we're at in terms of not just the performance of the 11, but also the squad that we've got, the kind of imbalances. We had, obviously, I think the pivotal moment in the match for me was the injury to Saka. And we saw a big change from then on with Granit Xhaka having to go left back after the half. I think it just kind of illustrated how important certain elements of the game are to Arteta's strategy, like having fit fullbacks. He's talked about it a couple of times. And in that game, Bellerin not fully fit. When he got forward, he was effective. He had a few chances when he managed to get past. But I think he's been instructed, or at least he has in his head, to not overlap too much and to make sure he's protecting. And again, that's to do with the limitations of our squad, not having to protect our centre halves to protect their weaknesses. So I mean, yeah, overall, it's not too surprising. I was happy with the shape and the structure. I think we didn't create enough chances. I think we can all see our forwards weren't firing, but and we can be frustrated with a few of our senior players. But overall, it was the kind of team performance that you kind of expected to see. Barring a rusty Aubameyang missing a few chances that he might usually put away, and those are the things we've been relying on for away goals anyway. So yeah, it's when he doesn't fire, we don't really have too much else, and that's kind of how it played out.
Yeah, I mean, a lack of goals, a lack of chance creation is definitely a thing. And we're going to talk about the chance created by specific players a little bit later on. But Drew, in terms of the actual lineup, the 10 says that team selection was awful by Arteta. Avon says that team selection was surprising, but it might indicate he's not prioritising the league. What do you think is going through his mind? I want to come on to sort of the decision to not even put Ainsley Maitland-Niles in the squad for a bit, but actually I want to talk about who he selected. Torreira was on the bench, which was a strange one for me, considering you'll come up against a very industrial side in Burnley. What did you make of his team selection?
I don't think this. I think everyone knows Burnley are going to sit back deep, in blocks. And with all due respect, I think Torreira plays well, but Guendouzi is a better player to be able to pick the ball up and break the lines with his passing. He's a little bit more creative than Torreira can be. He can drive play a bit more if he doesn't have a passing option available to him. So I think that's why he opted for that. And I think we're going to see more of that under Arteta than we saw under Emery. Trying to mix and match his 11s, maybe one or two different key positions based off of who the opponent is. And that's kind of how you have to look at each match from day to day. And I think that's the right way to go about it. I was maybe a little surprised Pepe didn't start, but I think, Martinelli has been on form and you have to start Aubameyang. I think he's already alluded to the fact that when both Lacazette and Alba are fit, both of them are going to play. I think we have to come to terms with that now. And Martinelli's been, in better form than Pepe can, and he's shown that he can be versatile and play, on the right as well as he can as the left, despite the fact he can also play center forward. So I think that's also something we're going to see more of as well. I think Pepe's had his chances to sort of maybe solidify his place in the team, but he's been very hit and miss lately, and that's okay because he has to sort of adapt to the league still. Our brand of football is not what they played at Lille when he was there, so he has to not only adapt to a new country, he has to adapt to the fact that we're playing a very different system than what he's used to. So I'm not worried about that yet, but Martinelli has come on strong, and he deserves the chances. So, Burnley are still a difficult side to play at home. They're still well structured. So, but on the positive side, we've allowed, I think it was 8 goals in our last 10. And that's already a massive improvement than what we saw under Emery before. So even though we're not, scoring the goals that we should be yet, the fact that our defensive structure is better, Mustafi and David Luiz do look better overall under Arteta than they did under Emery. So for me, they're positive still. And I think it's frustrating when you look at some of the teams we can put out that we're not scoring goals. Considering you have Laca, Oba, Ozil, Pepe if he's in it. These are players who, and again, with all due respect to some of the teams we come up against, we should be scoring goals against the likes of Burnley and Crystal Palace and such, considering their records. So I can understand the frustration and a bit of the angst, but overall, I think there are more positives than negatives, and I think moving forward, the rest of this year, the fan base has to see this as, it's likely we're not going to get Champions League to the league. It's likely we're probably not going to win the Europa League. But this has to be seen as not only just Arteta's betting period, but he's looking throughout the team to know who he's going to want to build with and who he's not going to want to build with. And then I think depending on what we see in the summer and then moving into next season, then we'll have our answers. And then if things still aren't getting any really marked improvement on the offensive side of things, I think we can begin to question things. But until then, I think everyone should just sort of understand the process, and I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, the mood around the fans is very, very reactionary. I mean, completely surprising that Arsenal fans are being reactionary. But I think, there is some justification, I think, in some of their concerns. Lacazette comes up a lot, French. He has not scored in an away game since, I believe, 2018. I think I saw a statistic. It was a ridiculous amount of minutes that he's not scored in an away game. He's on a ridiculous run of form without scoring anyway, let alone in just away games. How close are you turning around to saying that we need to drop this guy, we need to bring someone else in?
Yeah, I think for me, that's been the case for a few games. I think we spoke about it even just when Arteta was coming in fact, mentioning that the front three that a lot of people want to see. We included this Aubameyang up top with Pepe on the right and Martinelli on the left. Obviously, we've got a lot more speed and it seems like more goal threat at the moment. With Lacazette, it's definitely looking like it's a confidence issue. You can seem to see it in his body language. When he misses a chance, it's like his whole body sort of deflates a little bit. And with a striker in that sort of situation, I understand wanting to just play them through, and I understand it's Arteta's first job and he kind of wants to see what his squad is about. So there are all those mitigations, but us as Arsenal fans, we've been seeing it for a while, like you said, 2018 since the last away goal. And for me, I think he definitely needs to just have a seat on the bench and come on at the end of games and try and get something like that. And I think it's just not really working out for him. In terms of how we structure the team without him, I think it's going to have to be a case of of putting Martinelli, or you could even argue for putting him in place of Ozil. I've seen people mention that. I think that's not the worst idea. Maybe dropping him back a little bit, still having involved in the link-up play, because he does occasionally still do little things in terms of putting the ball into the box for Aubameyang. I think he put the ball onto his head in the middle of the second half against in the recent game, and I think he's still got some things that he can contribute and that he is contributing, and you can see why Arteta has persisted, but it's definitely reached a point where I think he just needs to have some time on the bench.
It's just, I can't get my head around why we see Aubameyang come back. We've had, for me, I don't think Pepe had been too bad, to be honest. I thought he was doing okay. He was taking players on. He was improving. But I just don't get this. Earlier on, I saw a comment in the chat. I'll see if I can scroll up and find it right to the start. But it was basically talking about how we were starting to see a little bit of Arsene Wenger in Arteta. I'm going to try and find the comment. Just give me a second. Drew, do you think that he can be a bit too loyal to certain players? And are we seeing that already with his team selection? Because we're seeing him sort of be very loyal towards Lacazette, seeing him very loyal towards even the likes of Mustafi, for instance. Socrates was kept on the bench after Mustafi seemingly might not have been fit. Do you think it could cost him in the long run with this loyalty?
No, I don't think so, because the fact that he already's dropped Pepe shows you that it's not about the size of the name of the player. I think Arteta knows and is pretty convinced of what he wants to do tactically, what he wants to bet into the club in terms of his ethos. And I think he can look at the team right now and see these are the type of players that I think have my best chance of being successful with that. And I don't think that's about loyalty. I think it's just about him trying to find the right balance, and it'll come with time. Like you say, people still want to see Lacazette dropped, but if you look at City for the last 2 years, Arteta had a massive say in the way they do things, especially with the ball, and Lacazette is far more similar to Aguero than Aubameyang is. And I think that's the reason why he's going to want a center forward who can hold up play, bring others into it, can lay it off, has a bit of creativity about it. Aubameyang is, for all his finishing capabilities, he's very much just an out-and-out poacher. He's great in the area when he gets on the end of service, but I think Arteta's going to want other things. He's going to want more variety and capabilities in other areas, and just have one or two players just be good at one or two things. I think if you look at City's side, you can see that, and that's why Raheem Sterling went from a very raw player with pace and maybe could get a goal into he's a much more well-rounded footballer now. Same thing with Leroy Sané. He was very raw at Schalke, and now he's come on. Now he came over. Before he had a rough patch, and you saw that he became a much more deeper player in terms of what he could provide. And I think that's kind of what you're going to want to see from Arteta. And I think that's what he wants to bring to the table. So, no, I don't think it's about loyalty. But if someone like Lacazette in the next another month or two still hasn't scored a goal, then maybe you could question it. But I think he's saying that with the way Aubameyang can run channels, just using Laca as an example, the way Oba can run channels and the way he can drag defenders out, it'll still give the team balance and attack, and he'll still get his goals because he might not be scoring at the rate that maybe he was last term. But I think Arteta's trying to find a balance overall. It's not just about highlighting one or two players. It's about trying to highlight the team as a whole, as a collective, what we can do. And I think that's important for him.
Yeah, what the team can do and the system we're trying to play. Josh Gunners Forever's comment was about playing round pegs and square holes, and at the moment, the problem is I feel that we just haven't got the squad right now that Arteta needs to be able to implement the style of play. I think that obviously he's been very used to at Manchester City. You look at the depth in their sides. Against Spurs, whilst they lost that game, they started with Mahrez and Sterling. They still had Bernardo and David Silva on the bench, and they've got so many options there. We simply don't have that depth. So much so that we're forcing two number nines to play in positions which they necessarily shouldn't be playing in. And when I was listening to the Arscast earlier on, they talked about how, even though we're playing Lacazette in the number 9 role, he's not playing his best game, because arguably people think he's a good second striker. But for me, I don't see that. I don't see it because he's not the best passer. I mean, he had a 70% pass accuracy against Burnley. We've got a guy that's extremely good in the box at holding the ball up, not holding the ball up 30 yards from goal like Olivier Giroud did and then would lay someone off. He's not that guy. He's great in the box to hold the ball up, turn a player and smash the ball into the top right hand corner. But we're not giving him those opportunities. He had one, which was blocked against Burnley, but we're not doing that enough. And then you've got Aubameyang, who is so wasted out wide. I mean, when we put the lineup out, someone tweeted me saying, "Oh, it looks like Martinelli's on the left, Aubameyang's on the right." I remember when you did the tactical breakdown in the summer, we talked about how actually Aubameyang's statistically more deadly on the right-hand side, but he started on the left and he struggled out there a lot to influence the game. And it wasn't only until he became more central, he got the chance where arguably he should have put that header away, but still could not quite get into the game as much as maybe we would expect him to. And maybe that's down to mentality at the moment. I don't think it is. I think it's still down more to the system, but it's just a real struggle to see what Arteta can do with the current squad that's available to do with him. French, if we move back to the midfield, Torreira and Guendouzi were partnered by Mesut Ozil at 10. Ozil is continuously scapegoated in a lot of ways. However, I think that it is fair enough to criticise when he doesn't, or he's not as influential. And for me, and I know what the easy, obvious retort to this is because people have tweeted me saying that, yeah, he created the most chances out of any other player. But for me, that is what your job is at number 10. But there's just not something quite there. Do you know what I'm saying? What's your sort of evaluation of Ozil in the Burnley game?
I mean, it's a bit tiresome almost at this point, isn't it? Because these discussions about Mesut Ozil have just been taking place for so long, and I feel like it's gotten to, well, it's what it's always been. We've all recognised that he's not the Mesut Ozil that we gave the contract to. He has a lot of good things that he does, a lot of valuable things that he does, but it's not, worth the £300,000 a week that we pay him. Not that fans pay him, but still it takes up wage bill and that sort of thing. And there's some games where it's probably just not his game. That's why he got taken off against Chelsea with 10 men. That's not his sort of game, and that's why he wasn't particularly influential away against Burnley. It's again just very physical, very tough, and unfortunately he's just not particularly effective in those situations. I think that's the main complaints about him. He can do some lovely things in other situations. He can be a fantastic player on his day, and we really enjoy watching him when he does that. But overall, it's the same frustrations. And he's a senior player. We saw him get a yellow card for dissent at one point, which was kind of nice to see him, get upset and show that he cared. I saw a few cynical people suggesting that, that he did that on purpose to show that he cared, but obviously we can't look into a person's intent in those situations. I think it's just in terms of playing him and starting him, I am quite surprised to see him continuously get starts in certain situations, but at the same time, so when Willock comes on, a lot of the time we see a change, or when Guendouzi came on for Ozil in the Chelsea game, we saw a change. And that suggests to me at a certain point, if we're looking more dangerous when a player's coming off, maybe we don't start him. But then another part of me thinks, is it because, again, it's Arteta's first job and he wants to see what all these players are capable of over, 10 games or whatever it might be, before starting to drop them. And then also there's the fact that with the last manager, there was a big war with Ozil in terms of having him dropped and not starting him, and it became this whole thing in the dressing room and this war between Emery and Ozil, and that's probably quite fresh in the players' minds, maybe more so than the fans' minds, and there's just an element of being intelligent and understanding dressing room culture, and we've got to let this player show us why he shouldn't be starting instead of just coming bench immediately or just not starting him in games. I can see where that might come into play and into effect as well. So it's this delicate situation we've been talking about for years, and obviously I think we all probably would like to see it end hopefully in summer or as soon as possible, but for the time being we just hope that he can be effective in the kind of games that are useful for him.
Yeah, I'd love to say that I was listening to what you were saying, but I've got the chat being absolutely addicted to being spammed like hell. I'm hoping that everyone, I mean, they're saying that we can't hear you, but I know that they can. There's loads of people in the chat for some reason spamming it, which I don't know why that's happening, but we're going to plow through because at the end of the day, this gets uploaded with no live chat anyway. So sorry about that, French. I'm sure Drew was listening to every single word you were saying.
That's right.
Of course.
Drew, do you want to just follow on from that quickly whilst I try and deal with this?
Give me the original question. I don't want to instead of riffing on French,
just building on from like what we think about Ozil right now, because a lot would argue that he shouldn't be in the side. A lot of people wanted to see Ceballos, which I don't necessarily agree with. I'd like to see Willock give him more of a chance, but I've seen issues with him at the moment. I've really seen issues with him at the start of the season, and when he came on, he's got the enthusiasm, but he just hasn't got the real quality yet that a player that will grow would have. So what do you think about that? And
I think that plays into more something you just said before about, I think the Ozil situation is one of those where it's Arteta playing his best player in that best position just because there's no really other available option to do it. I think if Ceballos settled and he was maybe fitting in some sort of form, or if Willock showed the decision making that he hasn't, then maybe it would give Arteta another question to answer. But for now, I think he's just going to go with Ozil. And I think some of that does to do with the fact that he's played with Ozil before at the club, and he knows what he's capable of. He's trained with him as a teammate. He's now he's trained with him as his manager. And I think he's one of those former professionals where you'll hear them say all the time, I know what he's capable of on this day. And I think he wants that quality in the side in case it decides to appear. I don't think Ozil has been as poor as people like to suggest. I do think he can do a bit more. But I think he gives the side a bit of a rhythm and the extra creativity, because if we really look at it, we don't have a ton of creativity in the side, really. Xhaka is relatively decent at it. Guendouzi sometimes can play a killer pass, and then you have Torreira who just isn't. And then after that, it's hoping that a David Luiz ball over the top or a Mustafi ball over the top kind of bears fruit. So I think it's almost somewhat also Arteta's hands being forced. Has zero creativity about him. Martinelli is more of a player to drive play. Same thing with Pepe, although he can produce a decent through ball. But when you really look at a player who can kind of give you some sort of ebb and flow and see 3 or 4 moves ahead and know how the play is developing, Ozil is really the only one on the side that can do that, realistically. And I think if you look at the City team that Arteta had to work with before, you had 3, 4, and 5 players in that team that could do that. At Liverpool have a handful of them. You look across Europe, and the bigger sides have multiple sources of real, genuine creativity and intelligence on the ball. And we don't really have that. Ozil's probably really the only one. So I think it's more of, I think he just has to be in it, because if he's not in it, then there's going to be no sort of identity of what Arteta wants to kind of, I think, put into place. I think if you take Ozil out, we're going to be more of a very direct counter-attacking play at pace side. And I don't think Arteta wants to do that. I think he wants to sort of, from the first minute to 90, he wants to really put our stamp on the match. We're controlling the tempo, we're controlling the ebb and flow of the match, we're controlling the pace of it. And I think, as French brought up before, we've already seen that kind of established already with him, that we are going in positive into matches now. The first 20 and 30 minutes, we're the ones in the ascendancy, we're the ones really controlling the flow of play, and we didn't really have that under Emery. But we had that when Arteta was here as a player. We had that before Arteta was here as a player under Arsene Wenger, and that's probably the best iteration we've seen from us before. So if he's trying to establish that, he really probably only can do it with Ozil. Or if Dani Ceballos was in a different predicament than he is now, if he was really settled at the club, he could probably do it from the 8 position. I don't think Ceballos would be good as a 10, but as an 8, kind of picking the ball up and driving play, and when they bring his others into it, then they could operate in that way. Kind of like when De Bruyne sits deeper in midfield instead of playing as a 10, when he plays in central midfield, he can pick up the ball and drive play and really create from there. You can see Ceballos being that player, but he's just not settled. So I think part of it is I think he trusts Ozil. Another part of it is I think he doesn't have a choice. So I don't know, but you do have to wonder if you could see Ozil being binned this summer. And that has nothing to do with Ceballos. It just depends on kind of what we want to do. But last year this deal, and you have to say the last 2 years with the club, maybe 2.5, maybe even 3, haven't really been what you would have expected. We'll have to see how it goes. But I think for now, we're looking to see him on the side, and hopefully he can produce.
I just hope that he can. I mean,
There's not much more to say, is there? It's we hope he does, and if he doesn't, then it is what it is. And if he does, then great. But you kind of almost want to say more than that, right? I mean, I get it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the defence then, French. I mean, there was a guy in that defence that had a great game. And he's someone that gets a hell of a lot of criticism a lot of the time. But it just... Obviously, we're talking about Mustafi here. Now, if Mustafi could eradicate those moments that we all know what I'm talking about, the Mustafi moment, the diving in when unnecessary, the pass back that doesn't quite reach and just completely throws David Luiz under the bus. Say if he could remove that element of his game, how good of a defender is he?
How good of a defender? He's probably worth 80 million if he was English, I'd say. I think he's definitely got all the abilities of a kind of quality defender in terms of headers, blocks, aerial duels generally. He's very good at all of those things. And like you said, it's a Mustafi moment. One in every 2 games, maybe it happens, and sometimes it leads to a goal, and sometimes it doesn't. I feel like something like that, you can't obviously. I feel like you just can't really eliminate it. I feel like it's an uncoachable element to a player's game, and it's something to do with what your brain jumps to under pressure or something like that. And I'm not a psychologist, and I don't know how many of these coaches are, but I can't see how anyone could get rid of that except for just hoping that maybe confidence makes him perform better under pressure in those situations. But certainly until the end of the season, I think he's got a role to play. We've got a bit of a weird situation with centre backs, so we've got a whole lot of them, but none of them are really playing too well. They're too old, or there's always a crisis with them somehow. And so he's going to have his position to play, and I think Arteta's made him look great. Which is really fantastic. And I think you have to give Mustafi a lot of credit as well, because he's obviously shown a strong mentality. He's come out and he's said how this has affected him, and it's been worse than anything he's experienced in his life with regards to criticism. And yet after that huge mistake in the Chelsea game, that was kind of the turning point from what I saw. So it was at that moment there that he got Luiz sent off. He made a huge error. He did his Mustafi moment, and then he turned it around and got an assist and helped us get a point. And since then, he's been consistent. I think he was good against Bournemouth, and I think he was one of our better players against Burnley as well. So huge credit to him for mentality, for stakes, turning it around. Huge credit to Arteta for figuring out how to protect him with a structure around him. I think obviously it's the limitations of our squad. I think that to a degree takes away from what players like Ozil and Lacazette can do, because a lot of players have to then take up positions to ensure that our central defenders are always protected, because we don't trust them in these kind of pressure situations. And so, that it's in itself, our improvement in defense has taken away from our attack as well. And we have to take that into consideration when we criticize Lacazette or Ozil or Pepe or any player at the moment. And I think, again, it's credit to Arteta in terms of what he's managed to make Mustafi look like now. I think, if we were to move him on in summer, I think his fee would have come up, and it's just overall quite nice to see, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that you can look at him as a player in sort of like instances and realise that, as someone said in the chat, he's going to do it again. He's going to have a Mustafi moment. It's a ticking time bomb. The positive side is that if you actually look at him on the whole, usually he has a very decent 70 to 80 minutes in a game, and it's just the 10 to 20, maybe not even that goes astray. And Javier said that it reminds me of the Valencia Mustafi. Now, people cite the fact that we paid around £34 million for Mustafi, which when you look at it and you think of the opinion of Mustafi, seems absolutely insane. But what you need to understand is that at Valencia, Mustafi played well. Like in La Liga, he was a good defender. Drew will be able to tell you a bit of what he was like for Germany, of which I'm less aware of. But in La Liga, as French said, he was good in the air. He had a really good area ability, even though he's not the tallest of centre-backs. He was good strength. He stayed on his feet a lot of the time, but when he did go to ground, he won the ball. And I think that he is the biggest example of where confidence takes a huge hit when things start to go wrong. If you remember when he came in, he went on a really brilliant unbeaten run when he was partnered with Laurent Koscielny for a very, very long time. And that sort of gets put to the wayside now because of all the things that have happened. We look at some of the instances like giving away a penalty at Crystal Palace, the moment where he had the ball backwards to Aguero in the League Cup final, and obviously the Chelsea game more recently, another example where things go wrong. But Drew, talk to me about your thoughts on Mustafi. And when thinking about the fact we have a massive surplus of defenders right now, do you look at him as someone that actually can stick around and add something to us? Or do you see him now as the better that he plays, the higher his price tag goes up and the more money we can make for him in the summer?
I think for me, I think it's going to be a scenario. I think we're going to try to look to move him in the summer. I think the issue has always been not what we want to recoup. I think it's been the wages. I think any club interested in him just doesn't want to pay £100,000 a week. I think that's kind of where it begins and ends. I think he can have something to offer under Arteta for now, and I think we've seen that he can do it. But I agree with everyone in the chat and you guys where he can play well for 88 minutes all he wants, but when he makes that one, it's usually only ever one, that one characteristic error in the match, and it's usually something that puts us in a costly position. That for me, before you would kind of hope that he would come good with it, that it could be coached out of him. But French brings up a good point where sometimes players just are so susceptible to certain things because that's just how they are on the mental side of the game, and sometimes it can't be fixed. And if Mustafi is that kind of player, then you have to think that maybe we want to move him on. If he was just that way when he just came to the club and it was there for maybe the first year, and then he started to show a little bit of progression every year after that, then you could say, you know what, fine. But the fact that he hasn't, I don't think we can say that he's untouchable. And I think when you hopefully have Holding coming back in and finding form. You have Saliba, who we all hope can come in and almost immediately win a starting role. You have David Luiz, who looks more settled under Arteta. You have now Mari has come in, and if he settles well, then you have that option. That's already 4 centre backs past Mustafi. Then you have to consider Chambers. You have to consider what we're going to do with Sokratis. You have to consider Mavropanos, and there are other options. And you certainly don't need 7 first-team centre backs. 5 at the absolute most. So I think he might be one of the ones to go, and I'm fine with that. And I think overall he's been a decent servant at the club. I get frustrated when people say that he's been the worst centre-back signing for Arsenal in the history. That's absolute nonsense.
Squillaci,
Squillaci, just 2 off the top of my head, without even thinking about it. So Maurice Volts wasn't very good. He played centre-back at times. He was pretty dreadful. So, I just think that I think for now he does kind of give you what Arteta wants and needs. A right-footed center back who can play a decent ball. We've seen that. He can distribute from the back. I think that's why he's playing. He can certainly do it better than Sokratis can. I think if Holding wasn't better standing right now, I think we'd see Holding and not Mustafi. But for now, we're gonna have to go with it. I think having Bayern back actually does kind of help, because I think on the defensive side of things, Bayern is better than Maitland now. I think Maitland had good recovery pace, so hopefully he could track back whenever you make his overlapping runs. He could maybe kind of get back in position. But I think with Bayern now, actually should help. So, and I think we kind of run with it again, like most things this season. We just have to kind of go with it, and even if you don't think it's the right player that's being played, I think you can see it's the type of player that Arteta wants. So that should maybe give you some indication of what we're going to see moving forward. Even if we don't want Mustafi starting, we're going to have a center back similar to that in that mold, in that position next season. And hopefully it won't be Mustafi, and if it is, then hopefully he can be coached to improve in that area. But I don't think he will. So I have no attachment to him at all, but I do think he's some just criticisms for sure over the years, and I think some have been slightly too harsh, but I think they were justly harsh, more so than not. But when he plays well, and then it's that one moment where we can't just shake our heads and go, of course. So.
Yeah. He's going to divide opinion for as long as he's here. I think it's probably fair to say, and some people would wish that time that he is here is going to be coming to an end. But we're going to have to wait and see until the summer. This summer, for me, I feel like I say this every year now, but this summer is the most interesting summer window that we've had in a long time. We're going to throw now the questions in the chat box. I know you guys have been waiting patiently in there, and thank you ever so much for tuning in, especially considering we got spammed earlier on. As someone was asking, Ian Hutchinson said, wow, 40 thumbs down. Yeah, for some reason, when a load of people enter the podcast, give the show a thumbs down and then shout there's no sound in the chat, which was strange. But we're not fooled very easily here. We knew that it was fine and we plowed through. So if you could make up the numbers by liking the video, guys, that'd be much appreciated. So let's go to some of your questions. French, I'll start with you, mate. Asra says, would you guys like to see Pepe on the left, Alba in the middle, Martinelli on the right? Strongest foot instead of inside forward play?
Yeah, I understand the concept. Like, we have them as natural wingers. They whip in crosses. I don't know that I've seen Martinelli cross too much, but I know Pepe is a good crosser of the ball. I think he's got a couple of assists like that. I don't know. I think it's obviously we would like to see our players in certain positions, and if it was FM, we would put them all just where we like to see them and change how our fullbacks went as well. But Arteta's obviously got all of these things kind of lined up for a certain reason. The reason that we have our players, our forwards coming as inside forwards is so Aubameyang can come in and Lacazette's playing up top. If we were to have Aubameyang up top and have those two out wide, we'd then be changing to our fullbacks underlapping, and we don't really have the natural fullbacks to be playing that kind of game. We have one fullback that goes out on the left and Xhaka drops down to protect him. It's all very tuned to our imbalanced squads, the way that we play at the moment, and I think it's very precarious, and I'm still really impressed by the fact that Arteta's managed to do it. I think if we had the fullbacks to do that, then yeah, sure, why not? I would love to see more interchangeability between them during the games. I would definitely say that would be nice. And I think we saw it a little bit against Burnley, if I remember correctly. I do think they swapped. I think Aubameyang and Martinelli swapped around at some point, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it was. I suppose if we had the right fullbacks, but I think at the moment our squad is just so imbalanced that everything's being put a certain way to protect these kind of weaknesses and imbalances, and I mean, it's not completely working, but it's certainly not broken, so I wouldn't make too many changes to that.
Fair enough. I tend to agree with you. Drew Datak LBC says, when will Gooners realise it was the players and not Unai Emery that was the problem?
Move on. Next.
Matthew De Souza says, is left back an area we need to look at next season, seeing that Tierney is becoming injury prone? No. I think it's just, kind of the nature of it. He's come in, and I think our standards are slightly higher than Celtics, and so it's the Premier League, to be fair, in terms of what you need in terms of your physical fitness and your levels. He's also gotten clattered about half a dozen times that I can remember. That probably really doesn't help, but I think he should be fine. I think we can assess that more so next season. If this is a trend next season, then I think we can revisit that question. It's not necessarily a poor one. I think it's just too early to ask that just yet. Fair enough. Bulgarian Gooner French says, why is Arteta hesitant to play holding?
Well, he's still recovering from his injury. I think there's definitely an element of protecting him. I think with him and Bellerin both coming back from serious ACL injuries, it's maybe a bit of a risk to have them both on the pitch at the same time as well. I think he and when he's played, he's looked all right, but he's going to need a little run of games to really get back. I imagine that he's probably going to get a few more before the end of the season. But I think it's just going to be a case of easing back. There's nothing really too much to play for, certainly in the league. Certainly a Europa League is a different option, but there again, it's not necessarily our best centre-back, so we wouldn't necessarily want to be trying him out in tough knockout games. I think for him, it's just going to be a case of continuing to rehab him with some game time every now and then, and really just being careful and protecting him as well. A lot of the time, people don't really, and I don't really, I've never had an injury to that degree, but I've had some injuries myself, and the amount of work that it takes to rehabilitate your muscles is really quite hard to understand if you haven't had that, and to not just to the level of day to day, but we're talking to the level of professional Premier League athlete, and that sort of thing just takes a lot of time and patience. So yeah.
I mean, I did have an ACL injury, as many people know, as Mike and Andy love to take the mick out of me for, because apparently I don't stop talking about it. But after I did it, I didn't kick a ball for 3 years. So, and I mean, I'm not trying to say that I'm a professional footballer in any sense, but I know that their process is much more, it's speeded up, but it hits you. It hits your confidence. When you step back on that pitch, you know that you're never going to be the same. It's never going to feel the same again. It doesn't. Like, my knee hurts when I play football every single time, or like if I'm playing tennis or whatever, it hurts. And that's never going to go away. And that sense of vulnerability really gets into your mind when you're playing a sport and just walking around. Like, you could just be walking around and it will just buckle sometimes, and it'll just feel a little bit weak, and it does hit you sometimes. But I hopefully that these guys have the psychologists around them, the sports scientists, that will get them to the position that they need to be. So yeah, I agree with you. And to be fair, I don't think Holding's performances have justified a start as of yet. I mean, you have to say that Mustafi has been better than him so far this season. So I think that's a fair point, and fair play, French. See, I'm liking this, Avon. Avon, one of our longest-serving members, knows how to use his memberships. I mean, he's using the Drew emoji to ask the questions. That is inspired. So if you are a member, or if you'd like to become a member, I mean, this is great. And French has got his own emoji now as well, so you can hit up French with a question. But Avon says, Drew, Ozil last year he's in the last year of his contract, and would you rather sell in the summer if someone is buying, which arguably could come from Qatar if you are to believe reports, or possibly DC United, or would you rather him see out his contract?
Man, that's kind of difficult. I think it also would kind of depend on who we realistically could go and find as a replacement, because presumably you want to think that Arteta kind of wants to play with a 10 or a 10 hybrid, and if he doesn't see anyone at the club currently who can really come in and play that role from the off, then we have to sort of review the market and see what we can find. And unfortunately, someone like Danny Olmo goes to RB Leipzig, and then you miss out on that boat. It's a little bit frustrating, especially for the price point. But yeah, no, I think it's always going to be difficult because of his wage packet. And, you know, last year of his deal, the only good thing about that is you can't really say that you can command the return from the upfront transfer fee that you can get when this is last year of his deal. Plus, you know, his wages, clubs just aren't going to want to pay maybe the money that we value him at, and then have to worry about his wages. There's few clubs in Europe that would take that on, and none of them are in the position to really need him. MLS, you know, the way transfers work with there, they could probably figure that out for DC United and have him be their marquee player because Rooney left. And then you're thinking about, you know, Middle Eastern clubs or China, and he's pretty much flat out say he doesn't want to go there. So that really narrows it down, and we might be in a position where it's either if he has to leave, we have to subsidize the wages and maybe pay for half of it, or he's just going to run out of his deal, and that's kind of the end of it. But not for nothing, if he does run out of his deal, even if he doesn't remain, you know, a first player, you know, next season, he still has so much to offer the young kids, and because we have such a good crop of young players, you have to think that all of them are learning something from it, and they've all spoken to as such. Everyone at that club has routinely said that, you know, you look at him in training and you can see the things that nobody else here sees, and you kind of want that information passed down to your young players, particularly players who we have who are central players. You know, Willock can learn from Ozil. If Smith Rowe comes back and we retain him next year, he can absolutely learn from Ozil, and that's a player who a lot of people think he can play a 10 role moving forward in his career, considering how Saka and Martinelli have come on that left flank. You can see ESR moving centrally. Imagine him learning from Mesut Ozil for a full year as his direct sort of protege, as you will. So I kind of see both points. Where I think it would make sense, I think it would make sense to keep him, because for the longer term, I think he has a bigger role to play in helping us build forward, moving forward. But if we do have a chance to sell him for you know, a decent return and someone can get those wages off the bill, you kind of would have to maybe take it. But, you know, I can kind of see both sides. I don't have a preference necessarily.
No, yeah, I'd sell personally. I just think that, especially considering it's light, there's a big chance we won't be in Europe next season at all. Getting that off the wage bill is huge, and if we can make any sort of money, I mean, if you think about the fee that you could get from a Qatar or from the MLS, more so Qatar, of course, then you're looking at maybe a tasty fee, which could be interesting. Last couple of questions. Andy McDonald, one of our esteemed members, says, French, will Arteta keep his word and be ruthless to the players not performing, do you think? Last game didn't seem to show that.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering myself the other day in terms of, why is he continuing to pick certain players? I think with someone like Lacazette, it's hard because he is clearly working hard. He is clearly putting the effort on the pitch. It's not that he's not performing in terms of effort. It's just not having the goal output or even the kind of creative output that we would like to see at the moment. But in terms of if he's going to be dropping them or if he's going to be dropping Ozil, I have to say that I think he will. After a certain amount of time, if we really don't see anything, if we continue to draw, etc. I don't think that'll be the case. So I do think we've been quite unlucky recently with a lot of things that have happened, and with hopefully a few people coming back from injury after the winter break and actually a break and a chance for Arteta to maybe get to know the players a little better and figure out how to get it to click in that final third. My personal feeling is it's not gonna be necessary to drop people like Ozil or Lacazette, because I think they will start showing us signs of quality as they have done under Arteta. I think we're just going through a bit of a tough patch at the moment in terms of team performance overall, and we're suffering up front. But if he had to, I personally believe that, I think if it came to it, that he would be dropping them. I think the fact that Ozil has been taken off a few times already in big games has shown that he's able to make big calls. I think he's dropped Pepe, which, whether or not you think he's not performing, that is dropping a big player who's arguably not doing what he wants him to do. So he's able to make tough decisions, and I think he would do that if he needs to. Yeah.
You're muted, Tom.
Yeah, I can't quite hear you there, mate.
Muted.
Well, okay, so
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm pointing at you. You're like, host for me, boy. Host for me. It's not basically this mic, which I persist in telling you how expensive it was. For some reason, when I join channels, it just decides to go, nah, done. No, I'm not having that. I'm not having any more. But thankfully, that's going to be pretty much where we're going to leave it after one more question to Drew. I did promise. Here we go. Saylavi says, Drew, I find Saka being a better fullback than Sayad and Kieran in terms of attack and defense. Am I wrong?
I think, because if you look at the sample sizes, a lot of players can adapt to a new role quickly and show promise, but it doesn't mean that's where they're going to be best. Another example is Alphonso Davies at Bayern. He's done really well deputizing at left back while Alaba shifts to center back, given fitness issues. But that doesn't mean he's going to be a very good left back, especially when you're using overlapping wing backs. The roles are very similar to someone who's already played left wing. So it's not that hard to really adjust. It's not like you're taking, a DM and turning them into a right back. It's a little bit different. So I think the qualities that you have in both those positions kind of match between left wing and a left back who wants to constantly get forward. So I think I'm glad he's done well, but I think long term, I think Tierney needs to be the one who you kind of build with. But it does show that Saka does have that tactical flexibility that you want and that you need in a really well-balanced first team. So if push comes to shove, we can automatically just slot him right in if there's ever an issue. And I think that's kind of what I'm taking the positive away from that. And for a player who's so young, who has shown that he can maybe do that, in a bit part role as his number 2 role if we need him to, I think that's a promising thing.
I think we were really robbed by the Tierney injury. Really, really robbed because, and the holding injury as well. Because before he got injured, he was such a confident defender. If you look at what we've been so unlucky with injuries, we really, really have, and they have cost us massively in these games. And for me, I just think that we create so much, especially when Kolasinac came back from injury. He looked so much of a threat under Arteta when he came in. So losing that side in the Burnley game, if we come full circle and look back on that was the biggest turning point. French, you started off the show by mentioning it right at the start. It was clearly the biggest turning point of the game. And had we have had Saka in that second half, I think we could have taken the game much better towards Burnley. But, I mean, let bygones be bygones, shall we say. So we're going to round things off there. Massive thank you to everyone in the chat box. And, of course, to French. Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks to everyone watching. Have a good night, guys.
No problem. And Drew, I mean, people won't miss you for too long. Well, our members won't anyway, because we're going to be recording our TGT Plus member show tomorrow. So that should be fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll see you tomorrow.
No problem. Yeah, so if you would like to hear that exclusive content, obviously there is 3 tiers of members. You can access these amazing emojis, which some people have been using very tactically tonight, especially during the Q&A, which I love to see. And if you want to get some exclusive content with the regulars like Drew and French and obviously Lee Judges we spoke to last month, then make sure you click that join button. If you want to get more exclusive content with some journalists and some expert insight, you love that on this channel, then click that expert one as well, because there's more coming out this month too. Thank you ever so much for listening. I really, really hope you've enjoyed it. As we said, we were spammed massively earlier, and that's hit our dislike button. So if you would like to remedy that, please click that like button to turn that around for us. We would much, much appreciate it. We will see you again very, very soon. And we will try and fill your winter break, which is a ridiculous idea for England, but they've done it anyway. But we will try to fill it with some form of entertainment, I'm sure. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.